evening, everyone. Are you ready to rumble? That's a very subtle suggestion to please take your seats and enjoy the great evening we have tonight, the Apollo 9 50th anniversary. Are you glad you're here or what? What a night. I'm your friendly host, Mark Larson, the radio TV guy, AM 760. 10 to noon, not to shamelessly promote it, but you can find it on the website, marklarson.com, and on KUSI as well, on KUSI News. Tonight, do you love the new space exhibition, Space, Our Greatest Adventure? How do you like that? That has been decades. I mean, you go back to the beginning of the space program. That is, ladies and gentlemen, the program is beginning. Thank you. That has been decades in the making. And we're just so excited to open that to the public tomorrow. You got a sneak preview tonight. This will be here for many years, expanding, because that's where America and the world are going now, space, all the different aspects of exploration going on now, SpaceX and Blue Origin and Boeing and so forth, so much going on. So we appreciate you being here with us tonight as we celebrate the official observance of the Apollo 9 50th anniversary. Today was Splashdown Day. And I know. And you're among greatness here tonight. By the way, some of the things coming up as you keep coming back and visiting here at the museum, you're going to find new things in Space, Our Greatest Adventure, including a big section, a mock-up of the International Space Stations. You'll get an idea of what it's like to be on the ISS. So enjoy that. Ladies and gentlemen, the program is still beginning.
Your attention, please. The program is beginning.
Wow, that was good.
Please keep your hands and arms inside the monorail at all times.
Now, if you don't settle down, we're going to bring up like a bishop or something to bless you. And then, at any rate, we do have a couple of rules tonight. There are no autographs, no photographs, please. I'll sign those later on. But just in respect to the luminaries around you, in addition to our guests tonight, we have a lot of exciting things to get into. I'll tell you some of the people, if you haven't noticed already, people sitting among you. This is where, when you come to this event, how many of you are here for the first time at the San Diego Air and Space Museum? A lot of new people, people from all over. We have family members of the crew. Welcome. Good to have you here tonight at the museum. Thank you for being here. So again, just no autographs, no photos tonight, and we appreciate your help on that. We do have a silent auction. As you can tell, it's quite silent.
The program is still beginning.
Don't forget to bid. We have 3 special items. They've been on display out here in the rotunda. The 50th anniversary Apollo 9 poster that's signed by our guests this evening, and you don't get them to sign much of anything altogether. This is a big deal. So bid on that and bid often. That's going to remain open, the silent auction, until 7:30. We also have a piece by our friend Chris Calley, whose dad, Paul Calley, was a famed artist. Chris is in his own right. They've done stamps around the world. Chris is over at the Larson table tonight, by the way, right over here. His art piece is available out there. That's also signed. And Michelle Rauch, another great friend. Some of the finest space artists are here. The artwork in this museum is fabulous, but Michelle Rauch here as well with her special, it's actually a watercolor and a combination kind of thing for Apollo 9. Bidding is over at 7:30, though, and I tell you, there are some great opportunities out there right now. Those are the only items we're doing tonight on any sort of an auction. And be generous. It benefits our museum youth education programming. Well, now that I'm sure that I've warmed up the crowd, nothing would warm you up now than to hear from His Honor the Mayor of San Diego. The one and only Kevin Faulkner is here tonight. Please welcome Mayor Faulkner. Good luck. Good luck with the crowd. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Oh, they quiet down for you. For you, they quiet down. Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Ladies and gentlemen, what a special night this is for not only the city of San Diego, but our country. Not surprised to see a sold-out event. Many of us have, of course, been looking forward to this for weeks. Mark and I have been talking about it on the radio. But thank you for being here. This is an honor as we come together, so many of us as San Diegans and folks from across the nation, to celebrate the 50th anniversary, of course, of Apollo 9 into space. I want to start, and if you would join me in thanking and recognizing San Diego's Air and Space Museum for their coordination of tonight's event. Everybody involved in the museum. I think all of us as San Diegans know that this museum is a premier place where visitors of all ages from around the globe come and they learn about this mission and some of the world's greatest achievements in aviation and space science. And this museum is only one of a handful to be awarded the Smithsonian affiliate status, and we are very, very proud of the work that this team does every single day, and it's a great experience to all. 1969 was a tremendous year in history. That's why we're coming tonight. It was also the year that our hometown San Diego Padres were formed. And the United States took a great leap forward in the space race, of course, with our historic Apollo missions. And we are very fortunate. We are very fortunate in San Diego to house the Apollo 9 command module right here at our Air and Space Museum. As children, and I can say this for myself, many of us dreamed of becoming an astronaut and flying into space. And so here tonight, we are honored to have three men who not only lived that dream, but served on one of the most groundbreaking missions in world history. Special thanks, we're gonna obviously spend some time tonight to our Apollo 9 commander, James McDivitt, our commander module pilot, David Scott, Lunar module pilot, Rusty Schweickart, who are all here tonight. As Mark just said, it was 50 years ago today that these men splashed down into the Atlantic Ocean after spending 10 days orbiting the Earth. It's just an honor to be here. It really is. Their bravery and their work on that mission, of course, contributed greatly to the success of putting the first man on the moon and the future achievements of NASA space programs. And so it's also my pleasure tonight to welcome so many of our other astronauts who are here will be introduced, but particularly our flight directors, Gerry, Griffin, and Kranz, both who served on the Apollo and other NASA space missions. Thank you for being here. And let me just conclude by saying I know I speak for all of us here tonight when I say that we are humbled to be in the presence of true American history makers to commemorate that Apollo 9 mission and everything that it has accomplished. And so on behalf of a grateful city, and in fact a grateful nation that is, so many of you have come together from all parts today, it is my pleasure as the mayor of the city of San Diego to proclaim March 13, 2019 to be Apollo 9 Day in the city of San Diego. Congratulations to all of you here tonight, all of our astronauts. Thank you. James?
I'd like to give you a copy of your speech, Mayor. Thank you very much. Mayor Kevin Faulkner here. Appreciate you being by, and a big friend of the museum here as well. Thank you. Now get back to work. We're paying for you. Thank you very much. These are great, great people. Fun night tonight, and that's we're going to go through a lot of great material tonight, and you will be at the end of the evening saying, I'm sure glad that I was here, because there's never been anything like this with this cast of characters, with the original crew, and some of the people here among you right now. I'm going to give you just a glimpse of who's around you in a moment, but you'll say, I'm sure glad I was part of that tonight. With us tonight, General Tom Stafford, Gemini 6 and 9, Apollo 10, Apollo-Soyuz test project, flew with our own Wally Schirra and Gene Cernan twice, member of our San Diego International Air and Space Hall of Fame. General Stafford is right over here. Coming up in May, it'll be the 50th anniversary of Apollo 10, which was the dress rehearsal, everything but the landing. There's General Tom Stafford there. Excited about being part of his event in Weatherford, Oklahoma in May. Also tonight, we're revving up to the first manned moon landing. And if you're one of these, if you're getting a little PC, it was all manned moon landings, okay? I'm not being they're a bunch of guys, backed up by a whole bunch of men and women who made it happen. 400,000 plus Americans who made the Apollo programs and the predecessors, Mercury and Gemini, and where we're going now and beyond, made it happen. In July, it'll be the 50th anniversary of the first manned moon landing. Of course, Neil Armstrong. Rick Armstrong's over here. Neil's son, Rick, is right over at my table here tonight. Rick, you can do a parade wave. Mike Collins, I think, is doing watercolors of fish tonight. He just loves painting. Command Module pilot. And Colonel Buzz Aldrin is right here with us tonight. Right over here, Apollo 11's Buzz Aldrin. Gemini 12 with Jim Lovell, and of course Apollo 11, a member of our Hall of Fame here as well. What's great is, and you know this if you come to the museum here often, these people hang out here. These people love our museum. We love them because this is a living, breathing place. This isn't just a storehouse of artifacts. This is about getting our next generations excited about STEM, about science, technology, engineering, and math. Into the shuttle era, Scott Altman is here tonight, former Top Gun naval aviator. He brought his own entourage. A lot of special accolades. Oh, you got to listen to this. I'll give you a little glimpse about Scott, because there are 135 shuttle missions, and he was on several of them. He was the pilot flying the F-14 Tomcat who gave the one-finger salute, the bird, to the MiG pilot. We all want to do that at times, don't we? Yes. And he's the pilot who did the low-altitude tower flyby. It took 9 flybys to get it right. He finally got it in Top Gun, all that. And he didn't even lose his Navy wings. And he went on to be pilot on shuttle STS-90 and 106, shuttle commander on STS-109 and 125. The Hubble telescope upgrade and servicing missions, that was huge. It's one of those things that you don't learn about, but you need to. Most of all, Scott, or Scooter, had the exceptional honor to cruise in the Navy with one of our board members, Storeman Norman Walker, and Jim Slug Kidrick, our CEO. By far his greatest accomplishment. Scott Altman, great to have you here tonight, buddy. Appreciate it. Well, I noticed Scott has grown a beard. I said you're going to be around Kidrick tonight. So he's grown a beard, and he's in the witness protection program. So apparently that's, I would be too. And I work. By the way, Jim Kidrick, as much as we kid, Jim Kidrick, our president and CEO, he and the team here at the museum. I'm chairman of the board. I get to do the fun stuff and be in the toy department, but Jim and the team do a great job. I think our best president and CEO we've had, Jim Kidrick. You'll hear more from him tonight. Also tonight, Janet Westling, one of our partners this evening, representing her father, Dale Myers, longtime NASA leader and innovator, also a member of our Hall of Fame. We miss Dale very, very much. County Supervisor Ron Roberts just retired, you know, that term limit thing. So Ron's here tonight. It's Ron Roberts right there, another great friend of the museum. Thank you for all you've done for San Diego. Speaking of county supervisors, Nathan Fletcher is over here. He's going to be heard from in a moment. Nathan, good to see you down here. Another great American veteran. Kristen Gaspar over at my table and hanging out with Rick Armstrong now, making deals. Madeline Pickens is here tonight. Madeline is involved in every good thing in San Diego and the U.S. Madeline, where are you? I saw you out here somewhere. Where? Right? Madeline's hiding out right down here. There you are. Jonna Doolittle, Jimmy Doolittle's granddaughter, is here tonight as well. Where are you, Jonna? Somewhere out there. And the family members tonight, I mean, if you look at the crew, Nancy and Rusty Schweickart, Mag Scott, Dave Scott, their sons and daughters, they're a large. Let me hear from, first of all, the friends of, let's do the friends of the McDivitts here, okay? So there's a McDivitt faction. All right? That's friends and family. And then there's the Dave Scott contingent. See, I told you. You'd say it felt like a family gathering. I know. And Rusty Schweickart brought everybody, he and Nancy, everybody they know. And then there's the other 4 of us who aren't related to any of these people. That's going to be great. Appreciate that. How about our board members tonight? I'm just so proud to be chairman of the board in my 8th term here, which is quite an honor, and our board members make it happen. And members of our board of directors tonight, if you stand up and wave so we can see you, you know who's hanging out around you. Give some kudos to our board members tonight. Thank you. And let's also give a big hand to Coast Catering and our staff. What a great job for the caterers, our servers tonight, and everybody working behind the scenes. Thank you. Now here's some of the money part. This helps because, again, all this goes to help our education programs at the museum. Our sponsors tonight, Janet Westling, in honor of her father, Dale Myers. Let's do this because there's a few of these. Let's do the one clap thing. This will help you get all coordinated for the evening here. So when I mention one, you just do this, okay? We'll see how good you are. Janet Westling, in honor of her father, Dale Myers, NASA leader, mentioned that in our Hall of Fame. The B612 Foundation, Rusty Schweikart's organization. The asteroid, ooh, a little smattering there. That was McDivitt, wasn't it? He said he'd do something like that. The Asteroid Institute. Northrop Grumman Corporation. Future Ventures, Steve and Genevieve Gerbitson. Hillary and Eric Charlton. Now you got it. JT4 and Dan Wild. Barona Band of Mission Indians. That was good. It was a nice syncopation. Now you can relax. Take a deep breath. Our table sponsors, Marilyn Thompson, Don Richmond, also members of our board. You can give them more applause. That's good. Lori Gerard and Scott McGregor. Charles Brandis. Oh, we were still doing the one clap thing. The Fusino Foundation. Event contributions by Kenneth Kubiak and the Talbot and Riley Family Fund. Give them all a round of applause because that helps make this all work tonight. We'd all rise now for our Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite Janet Westling here to lead us in the pledge tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. To perform the national anthem. Oh, we love her. She's so good. We love Janet, too. Thank you, Janet. The national anthem tonight to be sung by Sissy Davis right here.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Sissy Davis. Wow. Now you're all thinking, that was really great. They even had the flyover. You could sense that when they're great? We have flyovers here every couple of minutes at the museum. That was perfect. Thank you, Sissy. Don't forget the bidding for the silent auction goes on about another 8 minutes. Enjoy your dinner, a little bit of chat time, and then we come back in a few minutes with tonight's program, the main event, and you're not going to want to miss a bit. So enjoy. We'll be back in a bit.
Okay, he's on the loose. That was magnificent. You may even overshadow the rendezvous with performances like that.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Spider and Gumdrop are spaceships hidden atop this rocket. Officially, Spider is a lunar module that one day soon will touch down on the moon. Gumdrop is a command module, a mothership that travels to the moon and orbits, while 2 astronauts descend in a Spider to the surface. The 3 Apollo 9 astronauts riding into space in Gumdrop have a prime mission to test Spider in preparation for its job to land men on the moon. Assigned as lunar landing module pilot is Russell Schweickart, a civilian on his first space flight. Pilot of the command ship Gumdrop is Colonel David Scott, a space veteran of Gemini 8. Boarding Gumdrop is Colonel James A. McDivitt, veteran of Gemini 4, now the first U.S. commander ever to have responsibility for the simultaneous flight of 2 spacecraft and the team of 3 to man them both.
And there we now have an open tunnel, and we have in a command module 3 people and 3 pieces of equipment, each of which is about the size of a people. And with 6 of us in there, it is really crowded. One of the difficulties in learning how to operate these mechanisms is the weight. Primarily, it gives us the capability to transfer from one vehicle to the other through a pressurized tunnel.
I think it's important to realize that that Jim and I end up leaving Dave in a 3-man spacecraft, which takes 3 men to run it.
When we first got these 2 spacecraft, I figured, well, if it's so hard to train for this spacecraft, and we now have 2, it should only be 2 times as hard as this. But I found out, much to my amazement, that it's much more difficult than 2 times the old training problem. Because I have to learn how to fly this one, I have to learn how to fly this one. Then I have to learn how to fly these 2 together. Then I have to learn how to fly them this way, and some other way. And there's so many different modes that we can get into that we really have more than just 2 configurations. We probably have somewhere between 8 and 10 or 12, maybe. When we consider the S4B and the ascent and the descent stage and the command module and the service module and the different ways we can hook them together.
You've got a lot of variables there.
Right. So it's very difficult to train for this mission.
Everyone having fun so far? That was really weak. That was Jim McDivitt's son down there. I mean, when the kids of the icons start leading applause, you know, you all need to do better. Can we have a round of applause again? Thank our servers, thank the caterers, thank the purveyors of booze. Well. And for those of you who might not have paid attention in the first segment tonight, I'm still Mark Larson, your chairman of the board, your friendly radio and television veteran here in San Diego and just a proud part of this museum. As we get into, was that somebody did somebody's knee crack, or was that a bit of a plus? That was good. That was good. Thank you. It's good. So when McDivitt, I said this last night, so here's when you know how great this is. Let me just give you a little personal thing really quickly here. Wally Schirra, one of the original Mercury 7 astronauts, and some of his goodies are over there. Some of Wally Worlds is in our new space exhibition. Wally would have been 96 yesterday. Wally, one of the original 7 astronauts, the only one to fly Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo. He was a great friend, great mentor, and I always feel the need to mention him here because he got me involved in this museum. He really had a vision that these gentlemen who are with us tonight and those behind the space program really had and have. But he was a big part of what we do. So last night we're talking a little VIP dinner we did as the astronauts came in. And I think many of you can understand the fact that you're here tonight and you have all of these national heroes around you, and you think about the history in this museum, the living, breathing history, to think if you were back like many of us were baby boomer kids watching these space shots, and it was like the rock stars. Yeah, there were the Beatles and everybody else, but these guys, these were the rock stars. And I never dreamed as a kid growing up in the Midwest that one day, among other things, I'd get to know all these people, so many of them, and that I'd be getting crap from Jim McDivitt, which he does well. I deserve it, Jim says. So last night I said that, and he goes, I'll give you more tomorrow. There you are. Google these people. Look in your programs tonight. Take those programs with you. It'll remind you of the sponsors tonight, all right? To thank them and to remind you to come back to the museum often. But read the bios. And before we get into kind of setting the stage to really tell you more about each of our honored guests tonight, I'd like to bring up the newest county supervisor here in San Diego, Nathan Fletcher, who has a little something to share tonight, this evening, right here.
Hey, good evening. Let's give our Master of Ceremony and the Chairman of the Board here, Mark Larson, an appropriate round of applause. There you go. It's a little better for you. What an incredible evening. What an incredible venue. What an incredible group of people. You know, I knew it was a special night when I got to my table and I said, Buzz Aldrin's sitting at my table. Sir, it's a tremendous honor, and thank you to all of the astronauts who are here. You know, the mayor said that so many people as a child dreamed of being an astronaut. I went a step further than that. In 3rd grade, we had an astronaut come speak to our class. And it was the coolest thing that had ever happened. And I told my teacher, I said, I want to do that. So she took me to the office, and we called, literally at recess, and we called NASA. And this is back in the day when people answered the phones. And I said, I'm in 3rd grade, and I want to be an astronaut. And they were incredible. They had this program called the Young Astronauts Program. And they sent me this box, and it had pictures and science experiments and a little 3-ring binder I carried around. But she said, you should go to the Naval Academy and be a pilot. And I said, do you have their number? And so we called the Naval Academy, and they said, you need to make good grades and captain of the football team and senior class president. And I wrote everything down, and they sent me the catalog for the Naval Academy. I got on the list every year. And from 3rd grade until 8th grade, that was all I dreamt of and all I wanted to do. And then sitting in the back of the room in 8th grade with my friend James Davis, he was writing notes. And I said, what are you writing down? And he said, what the teacher writes on the board. And I said, you can't see that from back here. And it turns out everyone except me could see it from back there. And my soul was crushed. I had to get glasses, and this was a different era. You couldn't be a pilot, and you couldn't go on. Now, in fairness, having met some astronauts in my life, even if I could see, I don't believe I had it to find my way to space. I've been to this facility a dozen times, and I still can't find my way to the bathroom. But there is something so unique and special about our explorers, about our dreamers, about those who push the bounds and move beyond what's comfort. They drive us all to think big, to be braver, and they make us proud as a country. They inspire a nation. In 1963, John F. Kennedy said, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one that we were unwilling to postpone, and one that we intend to win. For 10 days, 1 hour, and 54 seconds, the men of Apollo 9 showed America, the world, and the entire universe what is possible in this country. And tonight we honor them for all that they have done and their great contribution to this country, and we're honored to be in your presence this evening. Mr. McDivitt, Mr. Scott, and Mr. Schweickart truly represent the best, and I think in this era can really remind Americans of what's possible when we come together, when we take on things that are hard, and we're willing to do the impossible. And so on behalf of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, which for decades included my friend Ron Roberts, and currently includes my colleague Kristen Gaspar, I'm here to present a proclamation for the County of San Diego, making it your day. And we love the mayor. I want to tell you the county's bigger than the city, so we're honoring more people than he did. Thank you very, very much.
Nicely done. Jim should come up and...
Who's taking it?
Jim Kendrick's going to take the whereases. Nathan, thank you for not reading every whereas on there. There's a lot of whereases there. And Mr. Kendrick, for tonight's photo op, enjoy. Photobombing. Nathan Fletcher, thank you. Well, now we get to the reason why we're here tonight, to celebrate Apollo 9, 50th anniversary. Not to look back, and this museum really resonates with this. It's not to say, well, that was nice. It's never like, well, that's done. You talk to any of these astronauts, and you'll hear this tonight from these American heroes. It's never a matter of being like, oh, we did that, and now we can just sit on the couch, and that's it. It's all about where are we going next? What's next on the horizon? That JFK speech, whether at Rice University or in front of Congress, one of my favorite lines from JFK's speech was, we're going to do things with things we haven't invented yet. I mean, how cool is that? That's real audacity. Like, we're not sure how we're going to do it, but it's what we do. That's what this is all about tonight. You're going to hear some stories, and this is a rare opportunity to hear from one of only two crews with all the crew members still with us, because there's some crews, some Apollo crews, they're all gone. Apollo 8, still here. Bill Anders was here with us a little bit earlier tonight. We can give them a round of applause. Apollo 8, Christmas 1968. We had Bill and Valerie here last December for a special event, but Bill Anders is still with us, and Jim Lovell and Frank Borman. Neil Armstrong has been in this museum many times over the years, God rest him. But Apollo 9, everybody's still here. And I know when you look at Dave Scott and Rusty Schweickart and McDivitt, they're going to be stubborn enough to be around here for the 75th anniversary. And who wants to be back? We're all coming back. So, what's that, Jim? He's 90. Well, you're not quite 90 yet, are you? You're 90 now? You're almost middle-aged, 10 years. I love getting heckled by icons. Speaking of icons, and please, gentlemen, I know how you are. If you hear your name, you start marching, and there's things that happen. Just sit tight till I have you come forward, okay? And then we're going to start the show here in the comfy couches. James Jim McDivitt, Apollo 9 commander. Brigadier General, U.S. Air Force. A whole bunch of Air Force people or Navy people. Don't get too nervous, but it's all Air Force here. Former test pilot. United States Air Force pilot, aeronautical engineer, NASA astronaut. He flew Gemini and Apollo. He commanded Gemini 4. That was quite a mission. Ed White with the first U.S. spacewalk. Apollo 9 commander, which was, of course, as you'll be hearing, the first manned flight test of the lunar module. The complete set of Apollo flight hardware. We don't get to the moon to that first landing, right, Buzz? In July of '69 without every mission, and especially Apollo 9. It was essential, and it went beautifully, as you'll hear tonight. By the way, Jim McDivitt also became manager of lunar landing operations and was the Apollo spacecraft program manager from, get this, 1969 to 1972. Last met on the moon, Gene Cernan and Jack Schmitt, December 1972. Back running things was Jim McDivitt. Give a round of applause for Jim McDivitt, who you're going to meet here in just a moment. One of my favorite things tonight, we did a live shot on KUSI where I'm a political analyst and all that, and we had all three guys in front of a gumdrop, Apollo 9, and I said, so Jim, it's live. We can't edit, you can't get it back in. So that was good. He was very well behaved. It was great. Now, as many of you San Diegans know, Dave Scott, the weatherman, is a big friend of the museum. He's a big mainstay of KUSI. So David Scott, the Colonel, Apollo 9 command module pilot, here tonight, member of the Apollo 9 crew, one of the only 4 remaining moonwalkers. 12 men walked on the moon. Dave was one of them. He's here with us tonight. That gets a little round of applause, too, right there. Colonel Dave Scott, U.S. Air Force, former test pilot, U.S. Air Force officer, NASA astronaut. He flew Gemini and Apollo, 7th person to walk on the moon. Gemini 8, he flew with Neil Armstrong. Read about that story. That story is, if that had, because there were a lot of challenges on that mission, and you learn about that, you realize how every mission was essential. Everything we had to learn. Apollo 13, we had to learn a lot. You go through all of that. Miraculous what happened. As an astronaut, Dave's first flight was Gemini 8 along with Neil Armstrong, March of '66. Then he flew as command module pilot aboard Apollo 9. After backup to Apollo 12, he flew as commander of Apollo 15, 4th manned lunar landing in 3 days on the moon's surface. And later on, just because he thought, I'll do something else, as they all do, overachievers, he was director of NASA's Dryden Flight Research Center. Dave Scott here with us. David tonight, Colonel. Rusty Schweickart, Apollo 9 lunar module pilot, former aeronautical engineer, research scientist, U.S. Air Force. See all the Air Force? How many Air Force in the room? Anybody else? How many Navy people in the room? Just. Hi, sorry, there were no Navy people on this flight. Okay, just so you know. No offense. Rusty was a research scientist and a NASA astronaut, business and government executive, lunar module pilot on Apollo 9. The first manned flight of the lunar module, he performed the first in-space test of the portable life support system used by Apollo astronauts who walked on the moon. It all had to work beautifully, and it did with Apollo 9. As backup commander of the first manned Skylab mission in 1973, that's your flyover, Rusty. It was the Navy. Just FYI. He was responsible for developing the hardware and procedures used by the first crew to perform critical in-flight repairs of the Skylab space station. Do yourself a favor, if you don't know that story, Google some Skylab, okay? Essential stuff. Every space shuttle mission, essential as well. Every mission, key. And unfortunately, we don't always teach that. Rusty also served in a very dangerous thing. He was a political appointee. California Governor Gerry Brown's assistant for science and technology, and later was appointed to California's Energy Commission, serving as chairman for 3 of his 5.5 years. And in his spare time, Rusty co-founded the Association of Space Explorers and the B612 Foundation. Check them out as well. Rusty Schweickart here with us tonight as well. Please welcome, as they come to the stage, the crew of Apollo 9, Jim McDivitt, Dave Scott, Rusty Schweickart, right here with us tonight at the San Diego Air and Space Museum.
Is this on?
Oh my God. He's found the microphone. Oh Lord. Ladies and gentlemen, something you never see. You know, we have room for the flight directors here. The controller's coming up here a little later on. There's there's Gene Kranz and Gerry Griffin are going to join us. But you guys look so great together on the love seat. Isn't it precious? This is something I thought I would never see.
We were a lot closer than this in flight.
You were a lot closer in space, yeah.
And that's all I'm going to say about it.
All right, McDivitt, it's not your turn yet. Hold on, we got to get Jim Kidrick up here. This is why Jim Kidrick is going to be here, and we're going to co-moderate this, which is like herding cats. James Kidrick, right here. Let me tell you about Jim. You know about him. You know him and love him. He's a U.S. Navy fighter pilot. Served aboard multiple aircraft carriers, including Lexington, Coral Sea, Enterprise, Chucky V, Carl Vinson, and others in his 21 years of service, primarily in the A-4 Skyhawk and A-7 Corsair. He's in his 14th year here as the top dude, the president and CEO here at the San Diego Air and Space Museum, Mr. Jim Kidrick. Also joining us on the couch over here tonight. Jim!
Well, thank you. I had thought I was going to sit over there, but I think I'll wait till Gerry and Gene come up with this.
I'm going to keep an eye on McDivitt.
You better.
Well, we're going to start and personalize our evening just a bit more with the three astronauts here, and we're very excited you're here. Let's give them one more hand. They're all here.
Come on, more. I just want a football player to do that.
Okay, so we're going to set the stage here with a few video clips as we go along. If we can just go with the first one, and we'll get going this evening.
Jim McDivitt, Dave Scott, Rusty Schweickart, three men to qualify this new machine, to make ready for the moon. This was the most complex system ever sent into space. First, the Saturn V, 7.5 million pounds of thrust from its first stage alone, over 3 million working parts. Then the Lunar module, well over 1 million parts. And the command and service modules, over 2 million parts.
35 seconds in counting.
March 3rd, 1969, the countdown for the launch of Apollo 9 was underway. Each piece checked out before launch.
Computer monitors. 20 seconds. Guidance release 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. We have ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engines running. Commit. Liftoff. We have liftoff at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Apollo 9, you are go all the way. Everything looks good. Roger. And Apollo 9, it's 5 minutes. Everybody's happy as a clam here. Looking good. So are we. Very good.
Wow. Okay, this first question is for you, Jim. Okay. You know, this was the third launch after the disastrous fire where we'd accidentally, quite honestly, killed 3 of America's heroes. Though some years had passed, describe the morale after Apollo 1's disaster and how your team helped uplift the morale of the North American team, Jim.
Yeah, first of all, you know, we not only have the 3 prime crew, but we have a backup crew. And I found out that we couldn't possibly, the 6 of us couldn't possibly do all the things we had to do. So we instituted something called the support crew. That gave us 9 guys. Most baseball teams have 9 guys. So one of our guys, Dick Gordon, who's passed away unfortunately, played baseball for the University of Washington. And he and the head of manufacturing for Rockwell we're talking about morale and things like that. And so the next thing I knew, we were committed to a baseball game. I'd never played baseball in my life. I played softball, but no baseball. Well, anyway, so we had 9 guys, and then Al Bean had his gallbladder taken out, so then we had 8 guys. So, well, you know, we didn't have a backup crew. So anyway, we did get some of our engineers to come and play with us, and then Albert got better, and we didn't need him. So anyway, we're going to challenge the manufacturing guys. So I was over there one day looking for the head of manufacturing. I couldn't find him, and just asked him, secretary, where he was. Oh, he's down at the rec center with the team. I thought, I don't have to go to the rec center for my team. So I went down there to see him. He had about 200 guys out there. Almost 3/4 of them probably played pro ball. And I went over and talked to him about how many guys are you going to play? You know, you can't only play 9. So anyway, we had the game. And it turned out to be a really great event. We only had one rule, that was you couldn't steal bases. And so our pitcher, Dick Gordon, started pitching and did a really good job. And after a couple innings, we were only behind by 1 run. And then, except by then, Pete Conrad, who was the catcher, couldn't throw the ball back to the pitcher. He had to roll it back. We weren't in very good shape because we'd only practiced once, and we called that off because the ball bounced up and hit Al Warden in the chin and knocked him out. So anyway, it finally got to be dark, and the other guy, the manufacturer guy, came to me and said, Jim, you know, we might want to call this off. It's getting dark. Well, hell, we were only down by 1 run. I thought maybe we can beat him in the dark. Well, we couldn't. We lost by 1 run. But the sequel to it was that we all went over to the Tahitian village, drank a lot of beer, had a hell of a lot of camaraderie. We had about 10,000 people in the stadium watching us, and it sort of bucked up the morale in the manufacturing guys, at least. And I think it's the kind of teamwork that really made Apollo go.
Okay.
And Jim won the Golden Glove Award.
No.
This is literally inside baseball tonight. It's amazing.
As a matter of fact.
Who knew?
As a matter of fact, when we were over at the Tahitian village, they did give me an award. I had a gold jockstrap that they gave me.
Well, now we're getting into it. So, speaking of that, the owner of the last jockstrap on the moon, Larry McGlynn, is here tonight. I'm not kidding you. Gene Cernan's with you. Larry's back here. When you mentioned Al Bean, we miss Al considerably. Another one we've lost, but I forgot about his gallbladder being taken out. I think Larry owns the gallbladder, just to bring it all back. But a lot of what you're talking about building up the morale, that was the important thing, because everything after Apollo 1 seemed to be bleak. There were people saying, that's it, we're done. Kennedy's goal is not going to happen. We're not going to do it before the end of the decade.
Well, you know, NASA had a problem with killing people. And, well, so did we.
We're actually not going to talk about that a lot tonight, okay?
But
this is only the second question, so sit back.
The administration
I think we want to get over to Rusty, Jim.
The administration was very adverse to killing people. So there was a moment there where I thought we might end the program after the fire.
Okay, Rusty.
Rusty, you're batting cleanup, Rusty.
Okay, by the way, this was a successful
wait a second,
launch.
Mark, will you shut up for a minute?
And
you know, the one thing that they didn't talk about when Rusty came up here, he was our in-house liberal.
He still is.
Okay, okay. He was talking about some politics there, but don't worry about it. Rusty, Saturn V. Okay, I mean, describe it. We just saw it in the video. Tell me what your impression of that was.
You know, I think the most lasting impression of the Saturn V was when Dave and I drove out the night before the launch to look at the spacecraft, to look at the launch vehicle on the pad. And of course, in the humid Florida atmosphere, with those incredibly powerful searchlights beaming up from every angle onto this, you know, phallic symbol, frankly, gleaming white in the night.
This is certainly going the direction we'd hoped, by the way.
Yeah, right.
It's going to be a sleepover tonight, so sit back, relax.
But I mean,
enjoy.
seeing that Saturn V, which had flown only one time before with Bill Anders on it, who's departed us tonight, but in any event, so it was the second flight of that vehicle, and seeing that the night before, probably 10 or 11 o'clock at night, we were supposed to be asleep or whatever, but that's just an incredible scene, because you know the next morning that's going to take you away from this planet, and hope it works, but it looks great.
Built by the lowest bidder, that's right. So mission goals on this, we'll talk more about this when we get the flight directors up here, get Gerry and Gene up here, but this was essential. Every mission was essential, but especially this because of the lunar module and so forth. So Rusty, your mission goals, big ones. You all had them, but you had it was a special thing because you had Spider in there. So talk about that.
Well, as you said, Mark, I mean, Apollo 9 was probably, I've tried to think about it, maybe somebody's got a different opinion, but I think it was probably the most ambitious test flight, first flight of any aerospace vehicle that had ever flown. I mean, it was incredibly challenging. Everything was new. I think in that one video that showed earlier, you heard Jim say that there were all kinds of combinations and permutations of the command module, the service module, the lunar module, which had an ascent stage and a descent stage, and big rocket engines all over the place on the sides, on the back ends, you know. And every one of the combinations and permutations that were possible, we lit that engine, we controlled that thing, and they were all different, and it was all software that had never been tested before, as well as the engines never being tested before. So that combination, as Jim said, of, you know, we could do it this way, that way, you know, all that kind of stuff, that was one thing that went on. But then in addition to that, I got the privilege of testing outside, as Dave did, but connected to the umbilical, but for me, with a portable life support system on my back, the brand new Apollo spacesuit. And if you look back at Gemini, we had a hell of a time in Gemini on the EVAs. I mean, they were, at best, partially successful. I mean, Buzz pulled it off the most successful tests on his mission, but that Gemini suit was really a problem. And we were all hoping the Apollo suit would be what it was supposed to be, and sure enough it was. It was easy to operate and allowed the guys, my buddies here and others, to run around on the moon afterward. So that was, it was an amazing set of first-time events.
And keep in mind, that was just about 2 years after the Apollo 1 fire. You think about the speed with which this happened, and the technological know-how and the stick-to-itiveness. It was huge. Tom Stafford, of course, could tell you about how much fun it was on Gemini 9 when he almost turned Cernan into a satellite because that spacesuit was such a mess.
Yeah.
You know, Gene learned that the hard way watching Discovery, I think, one night. Tom goes, well, we're going to cut them loose. I mean, those were different times. And the Russians weren't exactly sharing what they were learning either. So, Dave Scott, tell us about the same question on it, your mission goals, because you're command module pilot. So what was on your to-do list on this mission?
Well, you know, as Jim and Rusty already expressed the complexity of the mission, From my perspective, I got to fly alone and get rid of both these guys. And I'll tell you, you've seen the spacecraft back there. 3 guys in there. Man, once they left, it was sort of, oh boy, I got my own machine. But I might also say that Apollo 9 was probably, well, Jim and Rusty had to leave, got in a lunar module, went out to about 110 miles, came back, or were supposed to come back, and they had to use the descent engine and the ascent engine and the separation, and then get back and then dock. Now, as Jim said in another segment of another film, which is pretty cool, when they were asking if the lunar module, Spider, could re-enter, he said, oh yeah, it could, not safely. So, when I look back now, the plan was, if they couldn't get the rendezvous done, I would try to rescue them. In those days, the command module didn't have any radar. It didn't have any VHF ranging, which was required. And they had a radar which had big problems before the launch. So the risk that they took in the LEM is probably the highest risk of any space flight ever flown. And I got to really hand it to these guys. They're absolutely cool about that. There's never any shaking or worry or concern about whether or not they get out and get back. It was always, we're going to go do it. And they went and did it. So I always look back at Apollo 9 and said, I flew with 2 of the best guys who have ever been up there. Thank you, guys.
You know, I had to pay Dave $50 to say that. And one other thing, he was supposed to be tracking our light with his telescope. And when Rusty and I staged, the light went out. We blew, there's a big impact and it knocked the light out. And I hear Dave say, Spider, are you out there? Yeah, I want to hear why. I don't see you anymore. And I also want to say that I was really nice to Dave for about 6 weeks before the flight, okay? Because I wanted him to be there when I got back.
Did you guys actually go up in space together?
Hey, you know, one thing I think is important, and we mentioned it last night, I think our crew was together longer than almost any other crew. We were the backup crew for Apollo 1 and worked our butts off for, how long, 1.5 years or something like that. And then we were on Apollo 9 together. So it was a lot of time together, but quite frankly, they're not that bad. Other than Rusty being a liberal, we were all right.
Okay,
these are my friends.
Rusty, I got a question for Rusty.
Question for Rusty.
Did you ever find the music tape?
Actually, this is one of our questions a little bit later, so please answer that question.
Okay. It's a little bit of a story. You have to go back to 1969. We flew right at the time when the first Walkman, Sony Walkman, came out. I know that's hard to think back to, but it was the first Sony Walkman, and we saw it as a way to take notes without having to get out a pencil and paper and write down stuff and all that. So we would be able to fly a Sony Walkman with a cassette tape and a set of batteries, and we could talk notes instead of writing them down. And that was a great plan, and what we found out as we were working this in the simulations was that one set of batteries were good for about 1.8 cassette tapes. So, using our head, we decided we would always, after one cassette of notes, change the batteries so that we didn't end up missing part of our notes on the next cassette. So it was always fresh battery. That gave us 0.8 cassettes left in each set of batteries. And we said, hey, can we fly our own music? And NASA sort of said, So we said, yeah, great.
He didn't ask Dave or me.
So at any rate, we all got to choose our music that we would fly with us. We'd take up our own cassette of music, and we'd have that 0.8 batteries that we could play our music with. Now, these guys like country music. I don't have anything against country music, but I like classical music.
We have a lot against
And
that.
these guys have a lot against classical music. So what I have to tell you, Slug, to this day, I don't know how, but the cassette that I had of the music I played, and I played it again and again before the mission down at the crew quarters, to the point where these guys got really sick of my classical music.
It
right?
didn't take long.
So when I went to play my music, I couldn't find my cassette. And I'm looking all over the spacecraft, and there's not that many places, right? I couldn't find my cassette. Finally, on the 9th day of the mission, something like that, I'm going to have lunch. We're lunchtime. And Dave floats up out of the lower equipment bay, and he says, hey, Rusty, I found this cassette. Is this what you've been looking for? And I said, hey, thanks, Dave. I wonder where that came from. But here's the interesting part of the story, okay? Aside from giving them the bird, right? I decided, okay, screw you guys. I'm going to listen to you've been playing with me all the time. I'm going to listen to my music and have lunch, and I'm going to really enjoy this music. Because I recorded this music at home for months ahead. I would sit on my living room floor. I'd put the kids to bed, and nice little circle of light, listen to this music all the time. It was very, very personal to me. And so I took off my headset. Hey, you talked enough before. So I took off my headset, said, you guys got the comm, and I put my Walkman on the shelf next to me, the Velcro, and I took out my lunch, and I started to eat, and I pressed the button to play, and it started playing that music that had been a part of my life in preparing for the mission every Sunday night for months ahead of the flight. And that music hit me, and it just literally ripped me right out of the spacecraft, back down to those quiet Sunday nights with that music playing at home and the kids sleeping downstairs in the house. And we were in space flight, and it literally tore the heart right out of me, to the point where I had to turn off the music. I couldn't take it. It was that powerful.
We didn't want you to go back down to Earth. We needed you up there. Let me say one other thing.
And Jim was playing Folsom Prison Blues at the time?
We lost it. We had...
Now see, this may confuse our
Wait,
audience tonight.
Excuse me. The commander wants to say something, Jim. He's
that wasn't the only thing that was missing. When we got ready to go to bed, Rusty got in a little sleeping bag. We had crawled underneath the seats. And I got cold, so I got in a little sleeping bag. And Dave started making a lot of noise underneath the seats and stuff. And I said, Dave, what the hell are you doing? He said, I'm looking for the other sleeping bag. So after a while, we called down to Houston and said, Houston, where's that other sleeping bag? Long silence. It's down here on the ground. We didn't put it in. So Dave had a very cold night, a number of nights.
So let's review. Tonight we've heard some inside stories. We had a lot of baseball stories. And right now it feels like I'm in an episode of Dr. Phil.
Well, you see...
When did you know it was love?
See, we were partially mistaken. We
Yes.
were going to ask you questions like, This mission has been defined as a test pilot's dream mission.
Yes, that's a good
defined.
question. Yes.
But the music is okay with us.
That's
So
okay.
we want
Good,
you to know
good.
that.
We can go beyond that.
Okay, okay.
How about philosophy
Okay.
or religion? I mean, we can do all that.
Okay, so test pilot's dream mission. Dave?
Well, I think the beauty of the mission were the things we got to do. I mean, we're very fortunate to have been assigned that mission and to have all the pieces put in there to test. So as a test pilot, why, we had a chance to demonstrate that we could prove something, run something, make it work, find out if it doesn't work, correct it, and whatever. So there are a lot of pieces. And the lunar module, of course, is one, but we've mentioned also that Rusty had the first backpack to be used on Apollo, the portable life support system. And it's sort of overlooked in a lot of the things that we got to do. But Rusty tested it, it worked perfectly, and the next person who wore it on the moon was Neil Armstrong. And it worked every time on the moon. There was never a failure of the bliss, never. And Rusty was the guy who tested it.
Yeah.
So, and then,
I hadn't thought about that, but the next guy was doing it.
so then some of the other parts that were really interesting, that were fun but challenging too. You all know that Apollo 13 got back because of the so-called lifeboat maneuver, where the lunar module was used as a propulsion system to get them home. Few people know that on Apollo 9, we tested that concept. So Jim and Rusty got in the lunar module and pretended like the command module was inert or dead, and they ran that particular maneuver with the LEM engines, and it worked. So part of the test pilot's job is to try things that may be used or may not be used. So all these things we got to do were things that were used or not used, but actually a lot of fun to do, but challenging. You know, and I'll mention one thing on Rusty's music. You know.
Why?
After.
Sounds like the music was the challenge.
No, actually, it really wasn't so bad. I gotta apologize for it. It wasn't so bad. When you
I'd
get
never
to,
heard this before. Dave.
When you got to the 9th day out of 10 days, and you're getting ready for a meal, Rusty's music wasn't as bad as Tang.
Okay, let's go with the next clip, please.
Let's watch this.
Houston, just for your info, tunnel clearing went pretty much according to plan. Apollo 9, Houston's reading you loud and clear. All right, Roger, I know a little piece of info for you. The drone looks as good as new. Roger, Apollo 9.
With 2 spacecraft now in operation, new code names were introduced. The cone-shaped command module known as Gumdrop, the insect-like lunar module called Spider. Throughout the day, McDivitt and Schweickart would test every system of the lunar module. The major event of the day would be a burn of the lunar module descent engine. This engine, which will eventually be used for the actual lunar landing, would be under the manual control of Spacecraft Commander McDivitt for a large portion of the burn.
Okay, there's ignition.
Now, McDivitt put on a virtuoso performance, playing the throttle of the lunar module, each variation of thrust a note in a technological symphony.
Starting the throttle. 40%. Going down to 10%. Coming back up to 40%. Coming back down to 25%. Back up again. Okay, coming up to 40%. Throttle profile is complete. Just let it sit there.
All right, Dave. How important were simulations and practice? So a lot of practice before you actually go on the flight, a lot of simulator activities. So tell us more about that. How many hours? What was it like, all the simulations?
Well, simulations are really the key to preparing for the moon and training for the crew in particular, but also for mission control. Towards the end of the training period, we had what we call integrated sims with mission control. that his communications link would be set up among MCC, the command module, and the lunar module, and then we would run a certain part of the mission. But there was a crew called Sim Soup behind some glass who wrote a script on putting failures in. And the idea was to see if the crew and MCC could handle failures. And it was an insidious thing because we didn't know what the script would be. And at the same time, many of the managers in their nice offices with their closed circuit TV knew what the script was. So as we go through a sim Soup would throw in a big problem, and then everybody is watching us to see how we perform. And talk about a final exam. Well, when you got all the bosses and MC and everybody watching, you perform. So it was a great method of teaching the crew how to operate in space, as well as to coordinate with MCC, which was essential to solve some of the potential problems. Now, on Apollo 9, things, again, were new. We had 2 simulators, separate simulators, and one of the big problems prior to the mission was we could not get all 3 simulators, MCC, Gerry, Griffin, and Kranz, and the Spider and Gumdrop to play together. They wouldn't work together. And about 2 months before the flight, I recall this, the bosses came down from Washington, Rocco Petrone and all the big heads, to find out if we couldn't get the simulators running, because they knew if we couldn't get them running and go through some of these integrated sims, we couldn't launch. And they put it on Jim. And they said, okay, Jim, if you're not convinced that the sims work properly next week or next month, I forget when it was, okay, you're not launching. Guess what? He got the whip out, he got the poor simulator guys, and he whipped them at night and finally got them to go. But it finally played. But the simulators were really key to the whole operation, and it helped us learn how to work together, and it also helped create the names. Before Apollo 9, NASA said, no names for spacecraft. You can't name spacecraft anymore. Gus tried to on Gemini, and they wouldn't let him. So, okay, we got into the simulations, and we thought, well, you can't say, hey, Apollo 9, this is Apollo 9. I mean, I couldn't talk to Jim and Rusty from the command module, and everybody uses Apollo 9, so we picked some call signs. And obviously, the call sign for the lunar module was Spider. It looked like a spider, so we picked the call sign for the command module, Gumdrop. And the reason is, when the shape of the spacecraft leaves Downey on a truck, it's wrapped in blue cellophane, and it looks like a blue gumdrop. So the Spider looked like Spider, and the Gumdrop looked like Gumdrop, and we used them as call signs. Subsequently, every mission got to name their spacecraft, so it's another benefit of simulations.
Well, what I liked about it was I was going to name Gemini 4 the American Eagle, and we were told, no, it's going to be called Gemini 4. So I had the opportunity of being the first guy to not be able to name a spacecraft, and then we all got the opportunity to name one.
I remember us naming those spacecraft at the bar in Downey one night when we designed the patch.
Now remember, everything that happens here stays here.
Right. Well, Facebook's been broken all day. It'll be fine.
I became Red Rover because I was a separate spacecraft. And so we had actually 3 spacecraft when I did the EVA. And it was Red Rover, come over, you know, kids'
right.
game.
And you came up with that at the bar.
Right.
Where some of the finest work has been done in NASA over the years.
We came up with a lot of things at the bar.
The way I see it, you were at the bar because NASA was trying to kill you. Is that right?
Well, apparently, there's a lot of that going on.
The Tahitian village was a vital part of this Apollo program.
So are a lot of places at Cocoa Beach, but that's a separate evening.
The Tahitian village was in California, in Downey.
The road is speckled with great
Okay,
stuff.
let's go on to our next clip.
Next video right here. Watch this.
Gumdrop, you'll be getting a warning on your H2 tank.
Hey, Rusty, why don't you lean over here again? I'd sure like to get a picture of that whole scene. Okay, coming over.
Gumdrop, you'll be getting a warning in about 4 minutes on your H2 tank. No sweat. Gumdrop, this is Houston. You may be getting a warning on your H2 tank. No problem.
Okay, you ready for...
Okay, you ready?
Thermal samples here?
Ready.
Second, Dave, let me get around here. I can get a picture too. Okay.
Gumdrop, Houston.
All these marks all over the window. Shoot, oh dear.
Gumdrop, Houston. Dave.
Okay. Are you ready for the scene? Hey, use your head when you're out there. You know, this isn't a contest between you and that sample. All right.
Gumdrop, Houston. Anticipate a warning very soon on your H2 tank.
Okay, and you want to hook it in the solid ring, David, rather than that wire. Okay. No problem. Okay. There's one. It didn't even close on itself. Okay, now you gotta pull those straight up, and there's one more little hook. Okay, now next one. Whoa! About that. Got some thermal sample. Yeah, you're getting it wrapped up around your neck. Now give me. Okay. What if I got any film left? Oh yeah, I just take some more film going across Baja here.
Schweickart heart rate 77.
It's one place that's not too hard to recognize. Yeah, that's true. Let's switch hands with the camera.
Okay, we talked a little bit about the EVA a few minutes ago, but talk about the tether. Talk about that 77 heart rate, okay, while you're outside that capsule. I'm not sure I totally understand that part of it.
It was an instrument failure.
Well, that really gets personal.
No, with the backpack on my back, you know, I'm simulating. I'm using all the equipment that these guys, Dave and others, would use later on the moon to run around. An umbilical provides all of your life support, your communication, the cooling, and everything else. An umbilical provides everything. But I had everything on my back. So NASA headquarters wouldn't let us go just wearing the backpack, even though that would have been fine. They had to have the mental security of having a tether so that I wouldn't somehow mindlessly let go and drift away. So a tether is just a rope. And the interesting problem with a rope is that, you know, it tends to drift around and flop around and hook over things and that kind of thing, and weightlessness, just drifting all over the place. So actually, the tether adds to the danger instead of adding to the safety of flying out there. It's really interesting. But there was no way in the world we could convince NASA headquarters to go without a tether. So a lot of the work Jim had to do while I was EVA was to keep tension on the tether so that it wasn't just flopping around out there.
My life depended on not getting that tether hooked up with the radar.
Yeah.
I kept thinking, Rusty, stay away from that damn radar.
Yeah, everybody thought I was just going to flop around and break things and poke holes in my suit, but you know that wasn't in the game plan.
It was the classical music, wasn't it? Yeah. So Dave, outside the command service module, what was it like? So when you went and experienced, we saw some of the clip there. What was it like?
Well, it's pretty spectacular. I mean, you know, you get outside, and it's sort of like you can get out and stretch a little bit in that cramped little thing in there. the view is spectacular. And Rusty and I had about 45 minutes back and forth, and I'm watching him. And the whole idea is basically he's supposed to come across and come and get in the command module. Well, we didn't do that, but still, we had an opportunity to look, and I had an opportunity to put together a one-man EVA, so I could put a suit on without Jim or Rusty. And some of the guys, the engineering guys, came up with these ideas. And there's always some bright guy somewhere. So I'm training on all this sort of thing, and the suit zips in the back. So how am I gonna, these two guys are in a limp, how am I gonna put a suit on and zip it up from the back? Some guy came up with the idea, you put a lanyard on it, on a piece of Velcro, and zip it up. So okay, that worked pretty good. Then we had this other problem. I'm supposed to align the platform so that the sun angles are right during the EVA, but we were behind the timeline, and I didn't have time to align the platform. So we talked down to MCC again and said, gee, we're not going to be pointed in the right direction for heating and cooling and taking the pictures. Some guy buried back in a back room somewhere, Gerry or Gene would know where, said, no, that's really easy. Take the sunspot that comes through the window and orient the spacecraft so the sun is shining on the lower left box in an LEB. So I moved the whole stack around that way until I got the sun spotted on a box in a LEB, which is not a very sophisticated way to align an inertial platform, but it worked. And those photos, the sun is in the right place. So there's always somebody somewhere who'll solve your problem.
You got a future in Hollywood.
And Jim, you're overseeing all this. You're the commander. How are they doing with all of these maneuvers? How was the assessment?
The main thing was Rusty, don't hurt the radar.
Noted. You got this image you just
Yes,
bouncing
sir.
off the, yeah, that's good.
Okay, let's go to the next clip.
Another clip.
With McDivitt and Schweickart in the lunar module, Scott alone in the command module, the two vehicles undocked. Looking more an abstraction than a machine, the lunar module danced an inverted pirouette before its lone partner in space. Firing its descent engine, the lunar module would pull away from the command module to a distance of about 100 miles.
Okay, I have us about 370 feet. Okay, looks closer than that. Get done or so? How does that sports car handle, Jim? Pretty nice.
In order to dock, McDivitt needed to use a sighting device on the lunar module docking window. However, the brilliance of the sunlight made using the sight difficult. Alone in the command module, Scott helped talk McDivitt in.
Well, you're coming fine. Just keep coming easy like that. It's going to go forward to your right a little bit, relative to your body. Well, it's translation, but I can't tell what my attitude is, Dave. If I don't see it, so there it is, there. Now you're coming in. Keep it coming. You're almost there. You're about there. I have captured. Really good. Okay, why don't you take a break for a while? Man, when I take a break, I'm going to bed for 3 days.
No country music in that clip either. Noticing that. Jim, how important was all this goal, this whole maneuver? This was crucial, again, to get us to the moon landings and so forth, so.
Getting them home.
Well,
And
Mark,
getting home.
you're missing the point completely.
What's the point?
The point is, Rusty and I wanted to get back to the command module so we didn't burn up on the way in.
Well, that's implied.
Oh, okay, well. You know what, let me
so
say
that
something.
NASA doesn't get them, by the way.
Let me say something about that lunar module.
That's
You know,
a big
it
deal.
always looks like it's such a nice, solid thing, and it really wasn't. The exterior is made out of mylar, which is like cellophane. It's held together by staples and Scotch tape. And the lunar module that Rusty and I were going to fly, LEM-2, is in the Smithsonian in Washington. If you don't believe me, go touch those things. It's so fragile you can't believe it. And when we went to the first stowage mock-up, we got in, NASA had a preliminary design review, critical design review, but we also had a stowage review to make sure that everything fit. So we went up to Bethpage, and we get into the spacecraft. We got a couple hundred guys out there taking notes. The first thing happens, Rusty knocks something off, then Jim knocks something off, then something off. So I never got too excited on these things, but I was really getting a little irritated because we had all this debris laying there. And I finally said to the flight director, or the test director, there's a lot of people here for the storage review, and I think you could have gotten a hell of a lot better mock-up than this crap we're in. There's a long silence on the radio. And then he says, this isn't a mock-up, this is a Schweickart article. Then there was a longer silence while I said, oh. Yeah. Well, anyway, it was fun.
So, Dave, you want to interpret that? What was your view of all of that? That was the McDivitt analysis. Tell us more, the docking, the lunar module light, and then talk about the use of the telescope as well.
Well, you know, again, it's the complexity of the Apollo system. And I think, again, back to the beauty of Apollo 9 was we got to try all of this stuff. And it's like, you know, kids in a toy shop. You know, we did all the simulations. You get up there and you get to do the real thing. And it's like flying a real airplane, which is another sort of point of our training. It wasn't just in simulators. We'd both flown a lot in airplanes, and you learn a lot by flying airplanes, especially in those days, because airplanes, many of them didn't work well, you know? And that taught you how to take care of a problem. In fact, I'd like to bring up one little point here. Jim has a bunch of pals here tonight, a bunch of pilots, a bunch of really great pilots, as Jim was, okay, in the Korean and Vietnam War. And they wrote a really neat book. They get together once a week on Fridays. They call themselves the Friday Pilots. And they wrote a book called The Friday Pilots, and Jim's chapter is in there too. But it's a great bunch of guys, and a lot of them are here tonight. And they got us there, and they fought our war for us.
Yeah, why don't you guys stand up over there?
Stand up, stand up.
All right. Well, you know,
good going.
I'd like, if Bob Barnett there, Bob, would you stand up, please? Bob Barnett, there you are, okay. Bob started this thing called the Friday Pilots. We used to call it the Lunch Up Bunch Group. But I want to point out to you that that guy spent 1,989 days in captivity in Vietnam. Great guy.
Yeah.
Sit down, Bob. No, he's a great guy, and so are my other guys. We've got Army, Navy, Marine, and Air Force guys all chunked together. There's about 20 of us now. And we have guys dying off, and then the other guys join, and some of them don't last long. They get killed in a hurry or die or something. And then we get some more guys, read about it in the newspaper, and come over and join it. But it's a great group of guys, and I'm really proud to be part of it.
Okay, let's go to our next clip, please.
The prime recovery area had been shifted several hundred miles because of weather conditions in the original recovery zone. With the appropriate changes made to its flight path, Apollo 9 made its final descent into the atmosphere. The crew took these pictures of the re-entry and opening of the parachutes. The 10-day mission of Apollo 9 had met all its major goals. The ability to work and make a contingency transfer in the spacesuit and the PLSS had been proven. The capability of the lunar module to fulfill its vital role in the exploration of the moon had been established. The flight of Apollo 9 showed that we are indeed ready for the next step in meeting what may be the most significant challenge of our time, the conquest of the moon.
Okay, Jim, maybe you can lead this off, but all three contribute. You finally get down in the water, okay? You know, you've got the rafts around the capsule, and you got a lot of activity going on down there.
When I flew in Gemini 4, we missed the carrier by about 40 miles because we didn't have a computer. But on Apollo 9, we came down right next to the carrier. It was beautiful. You look out there and see the flags flying, the C-130s going by, the scuba divers jumping in the water, the helicopters all around. It was really a beautiful sight. But my motto was the space flight's not over until you're on the carrier. And so, it's a good motto. Yeah, and so when they had developed a new system in the Navy called a Billy Pugh net. It was an aluminum framework with a lot of netting, and it didn't get in that old horse collar where you could fall out. It just rolled in. So the squadron commander found out that because we were so close, they were going to have live TV for this. So he wanted to be a movie star. So he had not practiced, and so he decided he would do the recovery. So he came by with the net. And of course, the command module is shaped like a like a top. And so when the downwash would get on it, it would move. And then he'd get on it and it would move. So he chased Rusty around with the rest of us looking at it for quite a while. And then he finally came by and got him in. And then they came by to get David. One of these got dunked in the water, I don't remember which one. And they cranked Dave up so fast, he bumped his head on the bottom of the helicopter. And so we almost lost. Then he came back to get me. And so, and at the same time he's doing this, we got 2 life rafts. And over in one life raft was this Navy scuba guy changing the film on his camera. And so he wasn't looking at this net. And it came by and whacked him in the back of the head, knocked him out. He fell over backwards into the water. His head was underwater. And I'm standing there with the other scuba guys hollering. Of course, they can't hear me because we're in the downwash of the helicopter. So I finally had to run over to the other life raft and try to pull this guy out. I couldn't get him by myself. So the other guys came over and help me get him out. And so we almost lost the scuba guy there. And that night when I saw him, I asked him what he was. He said he had a hell of a headache, but thanks for pulling him out. But what really should have happened and did happen is that when that helicopter pilot landed on the deck, the chief of naval operations had been watching this fiasco in Washington on a television, and the guy was fired right then. So we had a new squadron commander that night. But anyway, the mission is never over until you're on the carrier.
Good call. Should we bring up like the rest of the story now, Jim? Because there's this story, and then there's what's going on the ground, and the mission control guys. I mean, kind of a big deal, kind of all part of the whole thing. And we are blessed tonight to have not just anybody tonight, but to have Gerry Griffin and Gene Kranz with us tonight. You know, Paul Harvey used to say the rest of the story. As they're ambling up here, let me give you a little bit of background here. Gerry Griffin, aeronautical engineer, former NASA official who served as flight director during Apollo, during the program, and director of Johnson Space Center, succeeding the legendary Chris Kraft, who is still out there in his 90s, just phenomenal. Former flight and weapons system officer in the U.S. Air Force, began his space career as an engineer flight controller at the U.S. Air Force Satellite Test Center, mission control flight director for all the Apollo program manned missions, including all 9 manned missions to the moon, 6 of which included lunar landings. Gerry's Gold team conducted half of the lunar landings made during Apollo on 14, 16, and 17. His team played a key role in the safe return of the astronauts on Apollo 13, and former director of the Johnson Space Center. Gene Kranz, known by many Americans as the guy with all the vests. Does he wear a vest tonight? No. Doesn't wear. Out of all the bunch, didn't wear a vest tonight. He'll explain why. American aerospace engineer, retired Air Force fighter pilot, retired NASA flight director and manager. Gene Kranz served as the second chief flight director, succeeding NASA's founding flight director, Chris Kraft, during Gemini and Apollo. Best known for his role in directing successful mission control team efforts to save the crew of Apollo 13. And so many know that movie. Well, that's a whole rest of a story kind of thing for another night. We may touch on it. He was flight director during the first lunar landing of Apollo 11. Buzz, you may remember that well. I know you do. He's noted for his trademark close flat top hairstyle, which is the best toupee I've ever seen. Fantastic toupee. And you realize his lovely wife, Marta, made all those vests. All the vests, his wife made those. Different styles and materials available in our gift shop, right, Sandy, when we're finished? Actually, that's probably a good idea. Gene Kranz, the embodiment of NASA's rough and tough and competent, the tough and competent of the Kranz dictum. Gene Kranz, Gerry Griffin with us here tonight. Great to have you here, gentlemen. And we could go on for a long time, but we only rented these couches so long, right, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. Where would you like to go now that we have, you realize what a rare thing this is right now? That we can applaud just what this is, okay?
So we'll start off with Gerry. Okay, you look at Apollo 9. You two participated in a lot of the missions, as you know. How did this fit into the puzzle? How important was it really?
Well,
and you both can answer.
Yeah, as this bunch over here, kind of, rowdy bunch over here, said earlier, everything was built to take one step after the other. 8 was a little kind of out of place because we didn't have a lunar module, and besides that, we wanted to go to the moon in a hurry, so we did. But starting with 9, we've really got into what I think is the meat of getting to the moon to land. And I can remember the thinking about, for the first time, we were going to separate these guys, 2 of these guys, without a heat shield. And it was kind of a gulp moment. I can remember, well, now we've done it, and we got to get them back. But that step was later repeated in the other missions a lot. But 9 set the stage to do that. Rusty's work with the backpack. So everything, I think, from 9 on was kind of, it was a critical, super critical line that had, each step had to work or we'd have been stopped.
Yeah. We missed the goal.
We missed the goal, very likely. And I don't know, Gene, did you?
Well, I got a confession to Jim and the entire crew. You know, I was division chief of flight control, but I didn't tell them that the team that I was assigning for their mission had never flown a manned mission before. These were the guys who did all the Agena work. And this was the first mission that they ever flew with the crew on board. They had the work on the Apollo 5 mission, where basically we flew that sucker from the ground and managed to satisfy all the objectives. So this was a good team to break in. And it was, I think the lunar module was probably my favorite of the spacecraft, because it was the device. The others, the command module was transportation. The lunar module was the business end that was going to carry the men to the moon and return them back up to the spacecraft. Basically, Jim mentioned a lot of things about the simulations. One of the things we got out of the simulation that was very important to 13 was the sim soups would always leave us the lunar module dead in the water, and we'd have to do a command module rescue there. And therefore we had to develop power down procedures to basically, because the command module rescue would take basically a day, if I remember right there. So that was a big piece there. The other one that was very important for the later missions is that this is the first mission we had where we had 2 spacecraft with all the communications between the crews. We had 2 teams now in mission control, but we had a single 1 or 2 controllers trying to handle all the communications. This is where those guys, you remember the encode that we had in there, remember the problems we had on docking. It took about a half-hour communications before we could finally get set up to accomplish that. The system was misconfigured. And so that was a big breakthrough. But I think the key thing is that the young people that basically moved over were the Agena teams we had during the Gemini program. And they'd never flown the mission before, and it was really great to see them perform during the Apollo 9 mission. Big breakthrough.
Did a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of think about it. Actually, we did a lot of new things with spacecraft, but it was a new scene in mission control, because we had all of a sudden a different set of variables to work with. So it was, 9 was big. It was huge.
It was big, and to touch a little bit on what we talked about earlier here, after the Apollo 1 fire, January 67, and then leapfrogging to the next manned event, which is Apollo 7, and Wally and Walt Cunningham, Don Isley, and then 8. I mean, the audacity of all of that, but 9 fitting into the puzzle, if you will, leading up toward Apollo 11, the subsequent landings. Talk a little bit about your perspective, both of you, on that, how important that was, because this was big, but every one of those missions was big, right?
The way I think of it is 9 enabled 10, Tom Stafford mission, and then 10 enabled 11. We had to have every one of those work as advertised to go to the moon on 11.
Yeah, the real challenge for me was that we had to bring new flight directors in throughout that entire period of time, because after the Apollo 1 fire, Kraft and Hodge left the program, so basically I was left with myself and Lunny. Cliff Charlesworth stayed there for a while, but we had to bring in Gerry and Pete Frank. And as we finished the program, we brought in the flight directors we need for the Soyuz and the Skylab programs. So it was really a question of continuing to grow the teams and the people and figure out which one of these controllers from the earlier mission would be a good flight director for the later missions we had. The people, I always say it's easier to build a spacecraft than build a team. And that was, I think, the challenge that we had.
Oh, I don't know. I built a lot of those spacecraft and they weren't so damn easy, Gene.
No, it was really a question. This was a tough time for us because we'd finish one mission, we'd dust it off, and we'd be a week later, we'd be in simulations for the next mission. We'd have to pick up a different crew, different sim soup, everything else. So we were really in a roll there, and it was really good. The people were great, and I think that was the name of the game. The people got the job done.
Yeah, these guys got to go off on a world tour or something. Yeah. We had to go right back to work.
Yeah.
They go back to work while they were parading around the world.
You know, you bring up the name Pete Frank, who passed, well before his time, but, some comments about his positive impact.
Pete was, he was a Marine aviator, and he flew the AD Sky Raider. And that itself says a lot about that young man. He was one of the guys that did the very early work in the development of the lunar trajectories, and he was a very quick study. He and Milt came into the program there, and they were a very quick study, coming up to speed in the business of flight control. Pete was really, I think, probably the most capable guy we had from a trajectory standpoint. He was as good as anybody we ever put in the trench.
Yep.
And it was really a pleasure to have him on a mission where you were going to more different landing sites in the moon. You were going to stress the system more. This is particularly true when we were doing a Apollo 12 and we were trying to land near the surveyor. It was nice to have him know how to handle the 969 procedures that we were using there.
The decision processes that go on, between you up there and mission control on the ground, it had to be just phenomenal teamwork. But how did it operate? Jim, you're the commander. You're going to do something. Mission control saying something. Somebody's got to be able to make that final decision or the direction you're going.
Yeah. Well, there's a role for everybody. I've had cases that I don't want to get into here, but there was a time when you're in the spacecraft and nobody on the ground can help you because they don't know anything that's going on there. And we had a couple of cases like that where I couldn't get the hatch open or closed on Gemini 4. Nobody on the ground knew any more about it than me. There were times like on Apollo 13 when the crew in the spacecraft didn't know too much about what was going on, and the flight controllers and the program office guys had all the data. And so it was a real teamwork. You had to trust the other guy's judgment because he was is in charge, or you were in charge, or somebody else was in charge. But you had to trust their judgment, and we all worked together on that with a lot of respect for each other.
And you used a word there, very important, trust. We had a lot more data that our people could look at and analyze quickly than they had. And yet, they, as Jim said, there are certain things they had to do we couldn't do. And so it really was a teamwork. Gene, there was something else about 9 that I didn't realize till I kind of started looking at this mission again to come out here. It was before we had gotten a TDRSS.
Yeah.
We didn't have a tracking satellite. So it was ground station to ground station to ground station. Acquisition at Hawaii, lost a signal at Hawaii. Acquisition at Guaymas, Mexico, lost a signal. So there was a lot of time we didn't see you guys.
Yeah, and Gerry, that was why the crew had to be up for so many hours at a time because the tracks across the earth were over these ground stations, and when we got off of them, we had to stop working. But we were over those damn ground stations for a long time, and so eating and sleeping didn't get in there.
No.
I want to give a tribute to my commander here. We had a special problem on Apollo 9 by the name of Schweickart. Yeah, Schweickart barfed a couple times on the mission. And, you know, in gravity, things behave. You know, you let something go from anywhere, and it drops to the ground, right? That's not true in weightlessness. It stays right where it came out. And it was the fourth day, the third day of the mission when we were testing the lunar module. I ended up barfing twice. I'm going to blame part of that on Frank Borman, who I'll never forgive, but that's a different story. The point was, on the fourth day, we were going to do the EVA. I was going to go out on the EVA, the extravehicular activity, testing the suit, the portable life support system, the ability to transfer from one spacecraft to the other. I mean, it was a big deal. And if we didn't get that done, it wasn't clear that we were going to get to the moon and back by the end of the decade. And so coming up on that, at the end of the third day, after I had barfed twice, we got together, and it wasn't at all clear that I wasn't going to be sick the next day as well. And one thing you don't want to do in a suit, EVA, go out in the vacuum, you can't get your hand up, a bag up, anything. Basically, not quite 100%, but effectively.
What Rusty's trying to say is he would die.
You barf, you die, right, in that
But
suit.
enjoy your dessert.
So, so that next day, on the fourth day, we were going to go right up to the EVA, pretend we did it, pretend we came back in and pick up the checklist again to make sure everything was working. As we got approaching that depressurization and actually going out on the EVA, Jim and I looked at each other, and Jim said, "How you feeling?" I said, "I'm feeling pretty good." Jim said, "Let's," and these guys, we didn't let these guys know, and Jim said, "Let's check it out in another half hour, see how things go." Another half hour, and this was about 15 minutes before I would go outside. Jim and I looked at each other, and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think it's go." And Jim said, "Let's do it then." And we did, it all worked great. But that was a command decision on Jim's part. We didn't get a chance to consult with you guys. We came up over the next ground station, and Jim said, "We're doing the EVA." And I've never seen any commander assume that kind of a responsibility. We had, you talk about trust, Gerry. We had that kind of trust that Jim and I could look at each other. It was going to be my life. I said it's a go. Jim knew me well enough. He said, "Let's do it." And I've never thanked you personally, Jim. I'm going to thank you right now.
You don't have to thank.
Nice.
From the observer's point of view, and I was watching all of this.
Neutral
too.
observer.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is, because I'm over there in a command module, and I got a lot of stuff to do too, but it's Jim's call. And in any tough situation like that, combat guys know this in particular, the on-site commander makes the decision. And he made the right decision, and it was on Jim. But he could tell Rusty's condition, he could tell the condition of the spacecraft and everything, and he made the right call. And that's what the commander's supposed to do. Thanks, Jim. It was fun for me, too.
Thank you. Well, there's a really bad fallout from this whole thing, because when we saw Rusty wasn't feeling well, Dave and I opened up all the food that we had for the whole 10 days, and we put it in different bags, and then we let Rusty take what he thought looked good to him.
Fruitcake.
And that son of a bitch did. He took the bacon bits.
And the brownies. And the brownies.
Now, talk a little bit about that. You know, if we had questions, we don't have time, we've got plenty of questions. We're barely through them here, but we're editing, right, Jim? But people always want to know, you know, what's it like? They want to know how you go in space, all that kind of stuff. And they ask you about all kinds of crazy things. But food, you mentioned Tang earlier. That was...
It's the same color as urine.
Yes, which I'm sure the sponsors really appreciated that you held it till now.
You don't want to go around licking up those orange ones.
Well, that's something I never thought I'd see either, is Jim McDivitt doing that.
Control yourself, McDivitt.
No, but so you talk about the space food and all that. We got a little bit of the stuff in our gift store here as well. But what's that like? I mean, it's not exactly today's standards, but it was pretty cutting edge then. Give us a little glimpse of day to day on board. Food, just
Actually, it was pretty good. I think for a camping situation, we were camping out for 10 days. It wasn't bad. The big problem that I had, I think Jim did too, and Rusty did too. The food was basically a mush. It was a powder that you rehydrated with water, and then you ate a mush. Dude, not too bad. The problem was there was nothing to chew. And when you got back, I needed to have something to chew. And then there's a line in the
You needed a pacifier.
There's a line in the transcript, interestingly enough, if you go look at it. Somebody asked Jim, "What do you want to eat when you get down?" And Jim said, "I want a good steak." And then they said, "Well, how do you want to cook?" "I'll eat it raw." So I offered up, "Hey, Jim, how about meal C and drawer B?"
Let me ask you this for Gene and Gerry. We heard some uh-oh moments here, but any major uh-oh moments in Mission Control on 9, as perfect as it was in so many ways? Or?
Well, the uh-oh moment I remember, I said something about when they separated the lunar module and the command module. That was an uh-oh that we had never done. The only other time I was a little worried was re-entry. It always bothered me a little bit. But the one that got me just in its normal stuff, I think Gene probably would feel the same way. None of us liked EVAs, particularly tethered from the using ship supply. And of course, Dave didn't get all the way out, and so he wasn't out trying to do handrails and all that kind of stuff. But I know it used to scare the devil out of me the whole time. Those guys were crawling around when Buzz was outside on Gemini 12. Those were tight moments. I was glad to get them back in and get the hatch shut.
Well, you know, one of the things that's important is that we didn't meet each other for the first time when we were in orbit. We spent a lot of time together ahead of time, and we used to sit down between the controllers, the engineering guys, and the astronauts, and work on a set of mission rules that we use during flight. And so, you know, it's not like we walk in and say, "Oh, hey, Charlie, I'm Pete. How are you? What's your name?"
Let's go fly today.
Yeah, let's go fly. No, we did a lot of work ahead of time, and as a matter of fact, when we worked on Apollo 1, we didn't have any checklists. We worked as hard as I've ever worked on a spacecraft in my life, trying to get everything together. We were working 20 hours a day. I remember one time I was sitting on the steps while they cleaned out the spacecraft next to some technician who was probably making 4 times what I made, and he said to me, "You know, Colonel McDivitt, this astronaut stuff isn't nearly as glamorous as I thought it was." But there was a lot of work that went in ahead of time in the simulations, in the mission rules, and getting ready for the flight. So we all knew pretty much what the other guy was thinking. Very important.
Okay, as we wind this up, I think we'd like to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the future? Where are we going next? You know, we see an awful lot of activity, deep space, the commercial space, and you guys were there. You started this all. So where's it going to finish?
Well, quite frankly, I think it's all screwed up. You know, during Apollo, we knew what we were supposed to do. We were going to go land on the moon. And we knew we weren't wandering around whether we were on this planet or that planet or some other planet. I remember, well, it's got to be, I've been out of NASA for a long time. Let's see, it's probably about 30 or 40 years ago. I remember standing on the steps of one of the NASA buildings downtown while one of the presidents, I don't remember which one it was now, said, I want to proclaim that we're going to Mars. And I was standing next to the NASA administrator, and I said to him, Bob, do you know anything about that? He said, no, I never heard about it before. You know, this is not a joke. This is not a joke. He really hadn't heard about it before. And now, I don't know what year that was, but we've been going back to the moon, off to Mars, back to the moon, off to Mars, back to the moon. And you know, they talk about all this stuff. I don't see anybody out there working on anything that'll land on anything. They just have these spacecraft that fly around in space. There's not a single lander out there. How the hell are you going to land on Mars or the moon without a lander? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And somebody needs to grab a hold of the reins and figure out what the hell we're really going to do.
Dave?
It's a mess.
I thought you were going to ask that question. You know, everybody, a lot of people ask that question these days, and I don't keep that close to it, but I do watch it from the outside because it's just a great thing to do. And Apollo was just an amazing experience, primarily because of the people and the culture involved, pretty crude technology. But it worked because there was a goal and there was inspiration and trust. And I look at it now, and candidly, you know, they have, the big plan is now to build a space station around the moon from which to stage and go land on the moon, okay? Well, that may be one way to do it. It may work, but I'll guarantee you it'll be the most expensive way to do it, because trying to go to the moon is very difficult, and the standards have been set, the concept has been set, and yes, you could go repeat it, but you have to have a reason to do it. And unfortunately now, the people at NASA and wherever are drifting. They're drifting left and they're drifting right. And they're building a giant rocket, which they're not going to build so much anymore. And they're doing this and doing that. And they have these aspirations of commercial partners. Well, a commercial company, from what I understand, is supposed to make money. And so far, nobody's seen how to go to the moon and make any money from the moon. But you can do great science, and the science is a major contributor to what we know on the Earth and the rest of the solar system. Unfortunately, today, science is getting chopped, and it always gets chopped. And it's sort of like, gee, we got to have a big show thing with a big rocket and a big space station and all that, but they're not stopping to work and really think about what contributions can be made from a scientific point of view. So I think we collectively, the United States, are pretty much dead in the water. Chinese are doing pretty good. They're doing very well. And so far, they're pretty much 100% successful landing their robots on the moon. Maybe they have the inspiration and the capability to go do something. But I think for a long period of time, where the country is at a standstill, and that's why I think whatever we can do to educate the younger people, and I think this museum is one place to do it. Educate the younger people so they know how some of this is done, and get them inspired to go do some new thinking, which was Apollo. You talk about new guys in the control center. All these guys in the control center, at the height of Apollo, the average age was only 27. They're kids. They're just kids. And they were inspired and they did stuff. So I think the word now is to educate the young people, help them understand what Apollo was, and hopefully in the years forth, they'll come up with something that really gets us back to the moon.
Rusty?
Let me say one. You know, the unique thing the unique thing about Apollo was the NASA administrator had a lot of guts. And when he went around and asked the engineers what they thought it would take to go to the moon, he said they came back with a number around $20 billion. Now today, NASA would go in and say we can do it for 12. And so then they would be struggling. He went in and said, it's not 20 billion, it's 40 billion. And NASA guys stuck behind him, and the Congress stood up and allocated the 40 billion. And when I was running the Apollo spacecraft program, I had no problem with money. I remember one day, Rocket Patrol called me and said, Dick Smith's having trouble with one of the engines on the Saturn. He said, you got any extra money? And I called down to my finance guy and I asked him, and he said, well, I know we got 50 million. Now remember, these are in 60s dollars. These are not peanuts. So I called him, I said, hang on a minute. I called Rocco back and I said, yeah, we got 60 million or 50 million. And he says, that'll do it. Send it over to Dick Smith. So I did. I sent $50 million in 1960 dollars. Those are big bucks, you know. But later on, I was asked to be the
low on glide path.
Later on, I was asked to be the shuttle program manager.
Enough.
No, wait a second.
So as I was saying, Rusty, your
important.
thoughts?
No, I was asked to be the shuttle program manager, and I went up to headquarters and asked them what they had told Congress it would cost and how often they were going to fly it. They were going to fly it once a week, and it was going to cost about half of what they said it would. And I told them no. And it delayed that program for about 6 years by not having it properly funded.
Mark, Jim,
Rusty, you're up.
Thanks a lot for the question. I think it's been a good object lesson. Don't ask a bunch of old farts how the new guys are doing.
That's the name of his new book.
They're doing fine. They're doing fine without us. It is what it is, and we go from here. And more power to the young guys, and especially the new private enterprise guys that are now leading the way. I think that's where the real juice is, and I'm really delighted to see that the entry of private sector into the game. Thanks a lot for the question.
Gerry?
I would pick up right where Rusty left off. I think the commercial sector is going to eventually, they'll be operating the domain of low Earth orbit. Getting to low Earth orbit, particularly for a space station or something, a satellite, or a Hubble or a James Webb, is it's primarily a hauling job. And I think there is signs that if the commercial sector can keep going like it is, that we'll have 2 or 3 providers potentially, which is what we need to operate and to get to low Earth orbit and back. That is a chance for NASA then, I think, to really do what it does best, and that's the exploration job. Go out beyond low Earth orbit. We've been trapped in low Earth orbit now for a heck of a long time. And so we haven't, the robotics, I think, are going to continue to play a big role as precursors. But our DNA is we are going to explore. And the human species is going to go beyond the moon, one day, who knows when, beyond Mars. That's not a final destination. But I really think there is a chance. I'm not quite as down as Dave is on what's going on right now. Now, the problem is NASA has to have some stability. And as Jim pointed out, the thing has been all over the place with the budget. And then politically, we're dead in the water. Think about Apollo. We went through 3 presidents, 2 of them Democrats, 1 of them a Republican. we went through several changes in Congress, and the support never wavered. And today we can't get the political parties together. We can't get, if you'll remember when we had split Congress and we had a speaker and a majority leader, there were different parties and they worked deals together all the time. But we've lost that capability. That's where I think we're going to hurt if we can't get NASA's funding on some stable plane at some level, and it ought to be about 1%, I think, of the federal budget. And we're less than 0.5% now.
I think from my standpoint, the books have been written. We know how to do many of these things. Technology is there. We have young people educated in this technology. We have to define a goal that will continue through, I'd say, at least a generation, through several administrations we got in there, a goal that provides the funding, and to do that, we have to find leadership. We need some leader capable of standing up and saying, this is what we must do, and here is why it must be done. And I don't see that happening.
Okay, well, gentlemen, we've got some gifts. We've got some picture opportunities here in a second. Our additional board members, if you join me on stage, please.
Do we want to show that video, or is it going to be after this?
Yeah, let's show that just while they're walking up.
There's some mission highlights here, so watch this, and then we have a couple other little bits of business to do, so watch this.
We were that first crew that was going to get a chance to fly this vehicle and test this vehicle that was going to take human beings to the moon. We were very, very aware of the time pressure, and everything has to go right if we're for sure going to meet Kennedy's goal of getting to the moon in that decade and back. Apollo 9 was an engineering mission from beginning to end. We tested every possible thing that could be tested. The mission was completely dedicated to testing the systems, the engines, and the guidance and navigation, all kinds of things that we could do in Earth orbit.
So when we first got into orbit, we had a lot of stuff to do. And so we needed to make sure that we had all the data we could get. The lunar module had to land on the moon. I mean, that's what it was designed for. And then it had to get back up to the command module so there was a ride home.
How does that sports car handle, Jim? Pretty nice.
It's really very difficult to get the coordinate system in your head. Normally we docked looking out this way, and for the docking with the lunar module, you had to look out this way. So the control system didn't operate the way it normally would.
It was the most complicated, messy system of springs and levers and latches and unbelievably complex.
We depressurized both the lunar module and the command module, and Rusty was going to get out and transfer over to the command module. And we were doing that to see that it could be done.
I'm partway up the front of the lunar module, making sure that I could safely do that and not poke holes in the suit with the antennas and things. And everything was quiet. Nobody was talking. that beautiful Earth out there, I mean, that's when I really saw just the beauty of where I was.
Now, Dave wanted to get out of the spacecraft too, so part of the mission was for him to open up the hatch. So we were all out there in a vacuum.
Here we are at this historic moment that we're all part of, not just the astronauts, but everybody who's alive today, and we're all on this small planet as representative of life. We're beginning to move out from this planet, which, as far as we know, contains all of the life in our little corner of the universe. It just worked beautifully. I mean, it was an amazing vehicle.
It was a hell of a ride.
All right, mission highlights here, Apollo 9. We have our board members, many of our board members here tonight, Jim Kidrick, and we have some special framed presentations and some flight jackets to present here to our honorees tonight. Is there an official ritual here, Jim, or are we going to? These have been fitted by our tremendous garment staff here at the San Diego Air and Space Museum. You didn't hear that? That's McDivitt saying, "It's cold in here, I want to put it on." Okay. And you may now applaud. There you are. Apollo 9 crew, Jim McDivitt, Dave Scott, Rusty Schweickart, Mission Control, Flight Directors Extraordinary Gerry, Griffin, and Gene Kranz. This is America, this is history, and it's the future as well, and you get to be here tonight with us. What a night. This is where you can get your pictures of the group here on stage, so we'll waive the photo rule as you take that. Don't mob the stage, of course, but take your pictures as you like. All right, while you're doing that, listen up. If you were out in the silent auction winners, we actually can, on the Apollo 9 50th anniversary poster created by our team here, and this signed by our astronauts, by the crew tonight, we're going to do 2 of these. The winners are Terry Sanger and Julian Stone. So just see us, I think, out of the front desk here when you leave. So that's for the Terry Sanger and Julian Stone. You're winning the Apollo 9 50th anniversary autograph poster. Thank you. That helps the museum. Dress rehearsal, original artwork by Michelle Rauch, autographed by tonight's VIP, is a beautiful work. David Duckworth, that is yours. Thank you very much for that. Power to Go, Chris Calley, autographed by tonight's VIPs, Norm Walker. Storm and Norman picked that up. Nice job. Congratulate all of our auction winners, and again, see our people on the way out. Take care of that. I think you had a good night tonight, didn't you? I know we did. Have a good time? And I'm watching everybody here. I'm watching, not a moment. Everybody's listening to every moment. You're hearing stories that many have never said, stories that they've never told each other, like Rusty tonight. Yes, sir. Today is Jim McDivitt's wife's birthday, so we can give her a round of applause as well. There are so many of these anniversaries now all the way through 2022, and we'll want you to come back and be part of this. Thank you again for being with us. Come back and visit us often here at the San Diego Air and Space Museum. Good night. God bless America. Thank you.